Hey folks, this is Riker with a Diablo 3 Season 25 Crusader build guide. This guide will cover the Akkhan Bombardment Crusader, which is soaring up into S tier to be the best Crusader build and among the best builds of Season 25. This is thanks to a unique interaction with the season theme of Season 25, the Soul Shards, which we'll cover in a bit, but this build is being turbocharged. Even more so than everything is being turbocharged by the Soul Shards. So in this video, we're going to cover the gear, the skills, and the playstyle that you want to rock this build, and the footage you're seeing in the background is by top player Norvald, one of the top Crusader players in the world, and you can always follow the written guide on maxroll.gg. It'll have the most up-to-date information as soon as the build evolves. If any changes are made, any optimizations discovered, Maxroll will have it all up to date. So we'll start by looking at the gear. This build revolves around the Akkhan set, which is all about staying in Akkhan's champion. The 2-piece bonus reduces the cost of all abilities by 50% while Akkhan's champion is active. The 4-piece reduces the cooldown of Akkhan's champion by 50%, helping us maintain 100% uptime. And the 6-piece, while Akkhan's champion is active, you deal 2000% increased damage and take 50% less damage. This is a flexible set that could be used with a number of different builds, but in this case, we're going to be a thorns build. We are Akkhan Bombardment. So we're going to work in 2 pieces of the Invoker set in order to buff our thorns damage. We'll use the bracers and 1 other piece of Invoker to benefit from the 2-piece bonus. Your thorns damage now hits all enemies in a 15-yard radius around you. Each time you hit an enemy with punish, slash, or when you block an attack, your thorns is increased by 90% for 2 seconds, stacking up to 10 times for a total of 900% increased thorns damage. Now, in order to have the 6-piece of Akkhans and 2-piece of Invoker, we need to equip in the cube the Ring of Royal Grandeur. Reduces the number of items needed for set bonuses by 1. Now, this item can only be acquired by opening bounty bags. So to get this item, just do Act 1 bounties, keep opening the bag until you get it, and then pop it in the cube. We'll also work in 2 pieces of the Norvald set. That's the weapon and shield combo. This increases the duration of steed charge by 2 seconds, makes killing an enemy reduce the cooldown of steed charge by 1 second, and while you're in steed charge and for 5 seconds thereafter, you gain 400% increased damage. Massive damage multiplier here. Other items we'll want will be the Captain Crimson set. We're going to work in 2 pieces of that. The belt and then either the boots or the pants. This gives us a bit of life regen, 20% cooldown reduction, 20% resource cost reduction, and then the 3-piece makes you deal more damage based on how much cooldown reduction you have, and makes us take less damage based on how much resource cost reduction we have. In our cube, we'll want to have the Mortal Drama. Double the number of bombardment attacks, and bombardment deals 500% increased damage. We're going to get the Thorns rune of bombardment, which will benefit from this damage multiplier. And we'll also take in the cube the Belt of the Trove. This casts a free bombardment every 4 seconds and slaps on another massive damage multiplier, 500% increased damage to bombardment. We're also going to work in a Convention of Elements ring. Gain 200% increased damage to a single element for 4 seconds, rotating through the elements in your arsenal. This is a physical build because Thorns deals physical damage. And for the playstyle, this build will revolve around a rotation. For our other ring, we're going to take a Justice Lantern. Gain damage reduction equal to 55% of your block chance. This will serve as a nice extra bit of damage mitigation. For our Soul Shards, in our weapon, we're going to take the Remnant of Pain. The base effect reduces our crit chance by 15%, but makes attacks against incapacitated enemies automatically critical hits. Now, you might be wondering, well, what's going on here? Thorns can't crit. Correct. Thorns is a special type of damage in this game that does not benefit from crit chance or crit damage. So because of that, we're not going to be putting any crit chance anywhere on our gear. So losing 15% crit chance doesn't matter when you're never critting anyway. However, there's something interesting that happens where with the Remnant of Pain, we somehow bypass the fact that Thorns can't crit. So the part that says attacks against incapacitated enemies are automatically critical hits makes our Thorns actually crit. And this is what turbocharges this build. We went from never critting to now critting. This is assuming this does not get ninja hotfixed before patch release. It's unlikely to be the case. This isn't crazy OP. It just makes the build very powerful. But again, maxroll.gg, link in the description to see if any changes emerge by the time patch goes live. Then at max rank, rank 3, you unlock a second effect on your soul shard. It's one of 3 possibilities, and the one that you'll ideally want is when you critically hit an enemy, you increase the attack speed of all players by 5% for 5 seconds, max 10 stacks for 50% attack speed. For our helm shard, we're going to take the Sliver of Terror. Your cooldowns are increased by 25%, that's bad, but for every skill on cooldown, you take 12.5% reduced damage and deal 25% increased damage. And then for the rank 3 power, we want to go with you cast a devastating Ring of Fire after killing 100 enemies. This Ring of Fire deals an incredible amount of damage. And if you can ideally time it to hit the Rift Guardian, it does an absurd amount of work. It could be tricky, however, to get that timing right, to kill the enemies just in time as the Rift Guardian spawns. For our legendary gems, we're going to take Boyarsky's Chip. This gives us more thorns damage. It's our single most important legendary gem, followed by the Bane of the Trapped. This makes us deal more damage to crowd-controlled enemies, which should be pretty much all the time. And then lastly, for pushing high GRs, a Bane of the Stricken. The more you attack an enemy, the more you gain a stacking damage buff against that enemy, plus 25% extra damage to Rift Guardians. And in our chests and pants, we'll get diamonds for more toughness. Now we'll go over exactly what we want on every piece of gear, but first a look at the skills. Bombardment Barrels of Spikes is our main source of damage. On a 60-second cooldown, we rain down barrels of spikes on our enemies. That's the only rune we can take because that is the Thorns damage rune. The Belt of the Trove will specifically cast down a bombardment with the rune that we have selected. So we can't just have a free slot and not select the skill and just rely on the auto casting, because the auto casted bombardment from Belt of the Trove will have no rune if we don't have the skill on our hotbar. Next, we'll take Punish Celerity. Striking your enemies gives you hardened senses, which increases our block chance by 15%. And whenever you block with hardened senses active, you gain 50% increased attack speed. This synergizes with our Justice Lantern, and our 2-piece Invoker, remember, triggers off of attacking with Punish. So the faster we can stack up that 900% increased damage, the better. Next, we'll take Akkhan's Champion, of course we have to, with the Prophet rune. Akkhan's Champion makes us deal 35% more damage, gives us Wrath Regeneration, and Prophet gives us more armor and a free life. Next, we'll take Iron Skin Reflective Skin. Iron Skin, a defensive power, gives us 50% damage reduction, but Reflective Skin makes it such that while we have Iron Skin activated, our Thorns is increased by 300%. Next, we'll take Steed Charge. This is necessary to maintain our huge damage multiplier from the Norvald set. We'll take the Rejuvenation rune here in order to get a tiny little bitty health potion. You recover 15% of your health when you enter your Steed Charge. We'll be able to spam Steed Charge quite a bit, so a little 15%, 15%, 50% will add up. Then lastly, we'll take Shield Glare Divine Verdict. Shield Glare blinds enemies. Blind is an incapacitate. This lets us benefit from our Remnant of Pain Soul Shard. We'll take the Divine Verdict rune. Blinded enemies take 20% more damage for 4 seconds. For our passives, we need to take Heavenly Strength. This allows us to wield the 2-handed flail in one hand. We'll take Hold Your Ground. You can no longer dodge, but your block chance is increased by 30%. This synergizes nicely with our Justice Lantern. We'll take Lord Commander. The cooldown of Steed Charge is reduced by 25% and Bombardment by 35%. And lastly, Iron Maiden, your Thorns is increased by 50%. So let's talk about the gameplay now. As you can see, we have a few different abilities on cooldown that give us damage buffs. Because of that, we want to work with a damage window. We want to align all these damage buffs in order to maximize all the bonuses at the same time. So we'll tie things to our convention rotation. By the time we're starting our lightning rotation, we want to be in the center of the enemies we want to kill. So you have before then to maneuver around, lure enemies together, because at the start of lightning, you pop Iron Skin, and then you hold down Punish to build up your Invoker stacks. Once you're about 2/3 through the lightning rotation, you pop Bombardment. Then immediately hit Steed Charge and move out of the big mass of enemies, and use Shield Glare to hit all of them. Shield Glare is directional, so you can't be in the middle and hit everyone, so you want to get off to the side, Shield Glare them all. This will blind them and make everything you do crit them now. When the first barrels start to fall, your cooldown on Steed Charge should reset, and your followers should have an Oculus Ring. Hopefully an Oculus Circle will spawn. Steed Charge to maneuver into the Oculus Circle to get even more damage. Now ideally, you want your Belt of the Trove to be synced up with your Convention of Elements. Belt of the Trove every 4 seconds calls down a bombardment. But is it doing that at the same time as your convention changes? Is it 1 second in, 2 seconds in, 3 seconds in? You actually are able to control those two clocks to sync them up. When you are 3/4 of the way through any elemental rotation, doesn't matter which one, 9 o'clock position on the clock, drink a potion. This will synchronize those clocks in the way that we want them to. That said, if you ever drink a potion again, it's going to desync the clock and you'll have to do it again. If you ever change zone, it'll desync the clock and you have to do it again. If ever there aren't monsters around, it'll desync the clock, because bombardment comes down every 4 seconds as long as there are actually enemies to target. That said, this is a little bit of an advanced tactic. You don't absolutely need to do this. Focus first on learning the rest of the build. This could be the extra credit assignment. Now, as for exactly what we want on every piece of gear. First off, breakpoint wise, we need to get cooldown everywhere. Because of the cooldown debuff that the Sliver of Terror gives us, we cannot afford to not have cooldown anywhere. Also, I forgot to mention it because it should be obvious. You want to get thorns damage as a secondary property on every piece of gear that you can fit it. This is a thorns build, you need thorns damage, and since it's a secondary affix, it often doesn't compete with any of the affixes we're primarily concerned about. So on our shoulders, we're going to take all resist, area damage, cooldown, bombardment damage. Our helm, strength, vitality, life percent. Remember, we don't need crit chance because this is a thorns build. We will want crit damage, however. On our amulet, strength, crit damage, cooldown. Our chest, strength, bombardment damage, reduced damage from elites. Gloves, strength, crit damage, area damage, cooldown. Bracers, physical strength, vitality, all resist. Our belt, strength, vitality, all resist, and life. Pants, strength, vitality, all resist. Boots, strength, vitality, all resist, and armor. Our Justice Lantern, crit damage, area damage, block chance, cooldown. Our convention of elements, strength, crit damage, cooldown. Our weapon, strength, damage against elites, area damage, and cooldown. Note that we've rolled off the base damage of the weapon, because base damage doesn't matter, only thorns damage matters. Now, it could be tricky, could take several attempts to roll off main damage on a weapon, but this is a wasted stat for us. And the offhand, strength, area damage, cooldown, and bombardment damage. For our Paragon points, max out your move speed, then dump everything into strength. If you feel squishy, you can put into vitality until you have about 800,000 life. For offense, cooldown, then attack speed, then crit damage, then crit chance. Defense, all resist armor, life percent, life regen. Utility, area damage, resource cost reduction, pickup radius, and life per hit. For our follower, we need to take the Enchantress, because we need all the cooldown we can get, and she will give us a little bit more cooldown. For her skills, we're taking Temporal Pulse for the slow, Prophetic Harmony for that cooldown, Powered Shield for damage reduction and armor, Focused Mind for attack speed. For her items, we'll give her the Smoking Thurible so she doesn't die. Flavor of Time emanates to us, pylon effects last twice as long, very powerful. Nemesis Bracers emanates to us, we click Shrines, enemy champions spawn, makes it faster to progress through greater rifts. Oculus Ring, when enemies die, there's a chance to create a golden circle on the ground, stand in it, and deal more damage. Ice Climbers to make her immune to freeze and immobilize effects. Then for more attack speed, Mempo of Twilight, Talrasha's Chest, Witching Hour Belt, and 2 pieces of Canes. Since she can't die, the only gearing stat we care about on her is Intelligence. Stack as much Intelligence as possible because all of her abilities scale off Intelligence. And that's going to wrap up this video. But do stay tuned for more Diablo guides. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more Diablo content.